Britain's political world has just been shaken to its core by a claim so wild, so absurd, that even Nigel Farage couldn't contain his fury. Moments ago, chaos exploded after Labour insiders suggested that former US President Donald Trump supports Labour's leadership. Within seconds, Farage was raging. He called it a disgraceful lie, accusing Labour of spreading deliberate misinformation to twist global opinion and manipulate voters. And just like that, a single claim ignited one of the most explosive political firestorms of the year. Across Westminster and social media, the outrage spread like wildfire. Farage's voice thundered across every platform. Trump would never, ever support Labour. "Are you insane?" he shouted in disbelief as clips of his rant flooded X, YouTube, and TV networks. Labour's press team had barely posted a vague statement about shared values with US conservatives before the backlash detonated. The reaction was instant and brutal. Their attempt to rebrand as globally aligned moderates collapsed into ridicule within minutes. The idea that Trump's rhetoric somehow mirrored Labour's vision for strong borders and economic fairness was mocked from every corner. One political analyst summed it up perfectly. "That's like oil claiming to represent water." Farage seized the moment. His anger turned into a rallying cry, not just against Labour, but against what he called a collapsing culture of lies. For his supporters, it was proof that Labour had lost all credibility. Inside Labour HQ, panic erupted. Phones rang non-stop. Senior aides shouted behind closed doors. The phrase Trump connection, meant to sound diplomatic and forward-looking, had instead detonated like a political grenade. What was meant as a clever PR soundbite had become a national embarrassment. Sources inside the party described the atmosphere as mutinous. MPs demanded to know who approved the statement and why it wasn't cleared by Starmer himself. By the time anyone could take responsibility, the story had already gone global. Broadcasters looped Farage's furious outburst side by side with Labour's statement, a humiliating split-screen broadcast across every British network. Even Labour-friendly journalists couldn't defend it. One BBC pundit called it an astonishing lapse in judgment. Another described it as political suicide. The Tory benches, of course, erupted with laughter. Labour's new best friend, Donald Trump, one MP quipped in Parliament as laughter echoed through the chamber. But behind the jokes, the damage was real and deep. Labour aides were divided. Some begged for an immediate apology. Others warned that admitting fault would make the party look even weaker. Meanwhile, Starmer, furious and blindsided, locked himself in meetings for hours demanding answers. Who thought this was a good idea? He reportedly fumed. Outside, the chaos only grew. Farage's tirade tapped into something bigger, the public's exhaustion with political doublespeak. "This is why people don't trust them anymore," he said in a viral follow-up clip. "They think they can rewrite history and no one will notice." That clip hit millions of views in hours, not just in Britain, but across US conservative circles too. And then came the knockout blow. In Washington, Trump's spokesperson released an official statement. President Trump does not support the Labour Party or its policies. Any claim otherwise is completely false. One line, and Labour's credibility shattered. Headlines blared. Trump disowns Labour claim. European leaders join the mockery. A senior EU official joked, "If Labour thinks Trump supports them, they clearly haven't been paying attention." The laughter rippled across talk shows and late-night TV. Britain was watching a full-blown PR meltdown unfold in real time. Inside Labour HQ, the crisis deepened into infighting. Leaks poured out, conflicting stories about who was responsible. Some blamed the communications team. Others whispered that senior strategists had quietly approved the message to test a more populist tone. It didn't matter who was right. The perception of chaos was fatal. Anonymous MPs began posting furious messages online. One called it the most embarrassing 24 hours in modern Labour history. Farage, of course, wasn't finished. That evening, He opened his GB News show with a smirk. "Well," he said, "it looks like Labour's international strategy collapsed faster than one of their economic forecasts." His audience roared with laughter. He dismantled the entire fiasco piece by piece, turning it into a sermon on integrity. "If they can lie about Trump," he declared, "what else are they lying about?" That line hit like a hammer. By midnight, his segment was trending worldwide. Meanwhile, Labour's press team was in meltdown. Inboxes overflowing, journalists calling non-stop. Every statement they drafted was torn up before release, terrified of reigniting the fire. Inside the party, the whispers turned to open revolt. Some MPs demanded the communications chief's resignation. Others called for a full reshuffle. And then came the international fallout. European allies quietly questioned Starmer's judgment. Private diplomatic cables described the moment as a sign of strategic weakness. Labour's reputation, at home and abroad, was in free fall. By morning, the British public woke up to the carnage. Front pages screamed, "Farage destroys Labour's Trump lie." Starmer's team in meltdown. Social media was a battlefield. Hashtags like #LabourLies, #TrumpDenial, and #FARAGE explodes dominated the feed. Even loyal Labour voters admitted it was indefensible. "Why mention Trump at all?" one supporter wrote. This was political suicide. Journalists dug up internal emails proving the blunder was avoidable. One advisor's warning was now headline news. This will backfire. Trump's name is political dynamite. And backfire it did. Protesters gathered outside Parliament, angry, disillusioned, and furious. Their placards read, "Stop using Trump. No more lies." What began as a small protest grew into a national symbol of outrage. For many Britons, it wasn't about Trump anymore. It was about truth. Across the Atlantic, US media picked up the story. Fox News mocked Labour's global cooperation disaster. Trump himself posted on Truth Social, "Fake news from Labour, sad." That 5-word post sealed Labour's humiliation on a global stage. Even the White House had to respond cautiously. "We have no comment on domestic UK politics," a spokesperson said. A silence that said everything. Inside Labour HQ, exhaustion turned to despair. Staff were breaking down under pressure. Starmer's advisers tore through draft after draft of statements, but none could stop the bleeding. Calls for resignations grew louder. Shadow ministers demanded accountability. "We can't move forward while this is hanging over us," one said bluntly. The crisis fractured Labour's image at home and abroad. Polls collapsed overnight. Support dropped sharply. Farage's approval surged. The headlines the next morning told the story. Labour collapses in polls after Trump scandal. Television networks replayed Farage's fiery clips again and again. His anger, his defiance, his confidence. The contrast was brutal. Farage standing for truth. Labour drowning in lies. By evening, even Labour's insiders admitted defeat. "We've lost control of the story," a senior source confessed. "It's not about Trump anymore. It's about us and our credibility." That realization was the breaking point. Farage hadn't just exposed a lie, he'd ignited a political reckoning. As night fell over Westminster, protesters still chanting outside, cameras flashing in the dark, one truth was undeniable. This was no longer just a scandal. It was a defining crisis, one that would test Labour's survival, reshape Britain's opposition, and alter the political future of the country in ways no one could have imagined.